Welcome to today's episode of the Normalized Surrogacy podcast by Surrogacy Mentor. I'm your host, Carey Flamer-Powell, experienced gestational surrogate, surrogacy agency founder, and owner of Surrogacy Mentor, where our aim is to help surrogates match with reputable surrogacy agencies for a safe, ethical, and enjoyable surrogacy journey. Today, I'm very happy to welcome our very special guests, parents via surrogacy and social media personalities known as the Broadway husbands, Bret, Shuford, and Hanna. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it and so excited to hear your story and learn a bit about Broadway husbands. So I'm just going to start by sharing some little snippets about you guys, and then we'll go into my questions that I have for you.
Sounds good.
Bret and Stephen met and fell in love in New York City while Stephen was a principal dancer with the New York City Ballet and Bret was performing in Disney's Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. They got married in 2011 and it has been one nonstop thrill ride ever since. Broadway Husbands started out as a way for Bret and Stephen to connect with fellow theater lovers as a happily married couple on Instagram. They are actors on and off stage and enjoy connecting with their followers on social media as they chronicle their lives, the good, the bad, and everything in between. From booking shows, not getting the part, and the ups and downs of their surrogacy journey, they invite their followers and friends to come along with them through it all. So that sounds like a lot of fun things to talk about.
I love the ups and downs and everything in between.
Yes.
Life.
There's so much to talk about in this. So let's just start with, we got the little snippet, but just take me back to when you met and sort of how this whole thing came to be with Broadway Husbands.
Okay, well, we met in 2006. I was a newly sober person and I met Bret in the rooms of recovery and we were friends for a while and then we weren't friends. I think beginning in like 2007 and
we were still friends. We were just more than friends.
Wait, you weren't friends like you stopped being friends or you went to more than friends?
No, we went to more than friends. Sorry.
Got it.
In 2007.
Got it.
And then in 2008, Bret, I guess that was in June. Yeah, June of 2008. It feels like a lifetime ago right now. You proposed to me, and then we got married in 2011. And in the beginning, I just want to say briefly, I don't think we had a lot of, or at least me personally, I didn't have a lot of aspirational gay couples thinking about marriage. And I think it was like one of the first, we talked about it pretty early on, marriage. Like I remember talking about that and being like, do you want to get married? And we were like, yes. But not really having that, not many couples that have gotten married where we were like, oh, that's something that people do, let alone have kids, And we did have that conversation too. Would you want to have kids? And Bret was like, well, I think it would be really fun to have a kid with you. That was very early on. And then we got married in 2011. Yeah.
Well, first I want to say I'm so glad we're having this conversation during Pride Month because, for those that may not be aware, we have a similar story. I got married to my ex-wife in actually 2006. And so 2006 and 2011, this is before federal gay marriage was a thing, right?
Right.
We were just making it up as we went along. And as you mentioned, we did not have a lot of people in our circles at that time who were quote unquote getting married because technically we weren't allowed to, right?
That's right.
Right. You could get, like in New Jersey at the time, you could get civil unions.
Or domestic partnership.
Maybe domestic partnership. And I guess, I don't know what New York was at the time. I guess it was civil union or domestic partnership.
Same.
So yeah, Connecticut was legal. Right. And that's where we actually got married, was in Connecticut.
I was going to ask, did you have some legal recognition of your marriage at that time?
We got married in Connecticut where it was legal, but then like 3 months later, the federal law passed and New York became legal.
Yeah. That was in like June or July, right?
Yeah. And we like to say it's because of our wedding that the federal government decided.
Yes, let's go with that.
Yeah,
I
like to take the credit for it.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to say you were Pride trailblazers along with all of us that got married before it was a thing. We got gay married before gay married was a thing.
Right,
So
right, right. Yeah.
So the other part of the question was, okay, so you met, fell in love, had a beautiful gay wedding, trailblazed gay marriage for America, and then how did Broadway husbands become a thing?
That's a great question. So, I was really into content creation and always have been just like really obsessed with social media and understanding the nuances of it and um, how to use it for creative self-expression and how to connect to people. It's just something I've always been sort of naturally good at and something I really was curious about. And so in 2015, I was in a Broadway show and I was like, you know what, this is the year I'm going to just like commit to being on YouTube. And so I had decided to make a YouTube video every single week on my own YouTube channel. And it was a big feat. I actually accomplished it, but it was a lot of work. And one of the things, we kind of created these series that I would do every month. And one of the series I called Broadway Husbands. And it would be me and Steven, I guess it was 2013 was the first one, because we
That
were
was the
highly
first time we did it.
unemployed.
Yeah, that was the first time we did
And
it,
we were
2015.
highly
Yeah.
unemployed between jobs. And I was like, we should make a video about what it's like to be unemployed living in New York City.
So the first video was top 5 things to do when you're unemployed
Just
and
like drink lots of coffee.
collect
Like,
unemployment.
and so then that actually performed really well. And then anything I did on social that incorporated the two of us as a couple, I just noticed performed really well. And I was noticing people, Instagram was kind of popping off. It was, maybe 2 or 3 years into its run at that point. And I was seeing couples online, gay couples online, who were getting these sort of influencer type of growth, but I couldn't relate to them. They were, people who worked 9 to 5 jobs, or you didn't even know what kind of jobs. They just looked really rich, or what do they do for a living? We're over here trying to figure out our creative lives. And I was like, I don't see us represented. I'm actually living the life I would have wanted when I was a kid, to be on Broadway and with my spouse and in New York City. And I would love to have seen this represented online. And I looked up the handle Broadway Husbands and nobody had it. And I was like, okay, we'll just see what happens, and I couldn't believe nobody had it. I thought for sure somebody has Broadway Husbands at this point. Anyways, we really kind of committed to that and started, and that was the same year we decided to start our surrogacy journey. So we thought we would document that process, and that's kind of when the account took off.
Well, isn't that how some of the best social media some of the best ideas in general, some of the best businesses, but also some of the best social media content starts is like, hey, this is what's going on in my life right now. I don't know if it's going to be interesting to anybody, but let's just sort of try it and be authentic about it and then see if it resonates. And then all of a sudden it's a thing of its own, right? So I think that's kind of amazing. And you actually keyed us up for a perfect segue to let's talk about your surrogacy journey. So you have a little one. How old are they now?
He's 3. He turned 3 in March.
3, okay. 2018 is when you started your journey. So take us back to that time and sort of what that process was like for you.
So, anyone listening who has been on the journey or on a journey knows that it is filled with ups and downs and so many things you cannot control. And it was exactly that. Like in March of 2018, we did our team day. No, not what do they call it? Like the day where they took our blood and took our
the super day.
It's not called team day.
Yeah.
They call it a super day for surrogates. Like you're there a long time and you do all this stuff at the clinic.
Yeah. I don't know if they call it the same for the
They didn't,
parents,
but
we did have to do.
It
was
wasn't
basically
team
our
day.
sperm donation
day.
basically.
Yeah. So we did
they
that.
took that to freeze it.
And then I honestly think, I don't remember this, but recently we saw the date of that and it was almost aligned with our son's birthday. Like it was very close. Yeah, like it was basically 4 years to the day.
Wow.
So that was when we did that. And then we looked for our egg donor through the IVF doctor or fertility doctor that we use. They have their own bank of egg donors, pool of egg donors. And, and I like to say this because I think a lot of people get hung up on choosing a donor. And we did look at 3 profiles, but ultimately we went with our first one, the first view that we saw. And it was an amazing, I also want to say this too, like, I don't know what's required or not required, but the thing that drew us to this egg donor was that there was this video of her talking and there weren't videos on the other profiles,
Mhm.
and the things that she said were so tuned in with us and who we were, and it made us cry, and it can make you cry right now, and and it was a beautiful, easy. We were like, yes, but there were like two other things to look at, and I was like, oh, I guess we should look at this, but then we went back and we are like, yeah, it's a yes. Like, why would we waste any more time doing this?
But honestly,
Right.
besides the finances, getting to that stage was the easiest part. Getting the embryos made and the frozen for us
It all
really kind
happened.
of flowed, except, it was a huge expense and we had to piece that together financially. It was then, once that's done, you're like, okay,
Now
now who's,
what?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
not a small piece of the puzzle. And
no.
so, if
No.
I understand correctly, you did not work with an agency, right? You guys did your journey what we call independent. So,
Yeah.
talk to me about that. That's not
Well,
easy.
we were trying to financially cut corners where we could just
Mhm.
because we are freelance performers and, we don't have just like disposable income, but also like we didn't want to keep waiting because we were not getting any younger. So
Right.
I took a risk and started looking on Facebook groups. And I've heard some people have had success there. So I explored that, and of course made a post, I think on one of them or maybe two of them, with our photo explaining us. And I will say some of the profiles that came in were super sketchy and
Yeah.
creepy and weird, and I was
Yes.
like, I don't think
It was an easy no.
so.
It was an easy
Yeah.
no.
Easy no. Yep.
Yeah,
For
and you're
sure.
just, yeah. But then
Yeah.
one person reached out and was very seemed she'd been a carrier before, and she was very upfront about why she wasn't going through an agency before because she had had some accident happen that didn't qualify her for PTSD. That was a minimal thing, and she was very upfront about it. And
Yeah.
so we were like,
Great.
well, let's talk to her and let's
Yeah.
meet her and da 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 da. And so she seemed great, and we started to proceed.
And so now it's March of 2019, and I during this period we had moved to Charleston. So this is all kind of tricky, but we were in Charleston, but I was in New York doing a show for a couple of weeks. And so we flew her up to New York because our clinic was in Connecticut. So we met her in New York. We all went and did the team
She
day.
lived in California.
She lived in California. So we
Wow.
all went up with her husband to the doctor's office and did the team day then. That's the
Mhm.
team day.
Yeah.
And she passed everything and was
I
cleared.
will say the social worker was like, I'm a little concerned about this PTSD thing. I want to make sure you guys are aware. And we were like, yeah, she told us about it. She was very transparent about it.
Yeah, it was all out in the open. And we felt comfortable with everything that had happened. It felt like we had already been forming a relationship with her and her husband. And like I said, we had moved to Charleston, and we decided not to stay in Charleston. So we moved back to New York City in May of 2019. So that kind of put a pause on things. And so we explained to her, hey, like we just need to take a little bit more time before we move forward. And she said, that's fine, just as long as we get this, we do the transfer before the end of the year. And we said,
She said if
absolutely.
it's done by the end of December, I'm good.
Yeah. And we said,
Yeah.
yes, we will. And then we moved forward. We had our contracts through our lawyer, and we were in the process of sending it to her. And then when we sent it to her, which was in November or October or whenever, somewhere in October, I think, she took a while to get back. And then we found out right before Thanksgiving in November of 2019 that she did not want to go further. So we were devastated.
Oh my
Yeah, we were
gosh.
devastated. Yeah,
And
devastated.
it's her right.
Yeah,
I understood it had been
totally.
six or 8 months or something, and I understand.
Yeah.
Sure.
But it was devastating.
It was a devastating moment.
Absolutely.
And it was
We had
Thanksgiving.
money, and we'd invested
Yeah.
the legal stuff, and everything was ready, and so we just were like,
course.
okay.
So then,
Wow.
when is Kate's birthday? December 10th? So it was December 10th. So a couple weeks later, we're at a friend's birthday party, and a mutual friend of ours was there, and her name is Crystal. And we had known her through this friend whose birthday it was. And she came up to us, and she had a drink in her hand. I don't know if she was drunk or not, but she came up to us and was like, I heard what happened. I would love to carry your baby for you. And I was like,
What? Wow.
and at this moment, we were just like, okay, well, we will call you tomorrow, and you will send your paperwork to our doctor to see if you can get cleared.
And sure enough, like the next day, she said, I'm serious. Like, I wouldn't offer this to anybody because I don't really love being pregnant, but I think you'd be such great parents. I want to help you. And I was like,
Holy
Wow.
cow. That's amazing.
And that's who carried our baby. She qualified, and everything was great, and she yeah, it was really, really cool to have someone we knew, and you know,
Yeah.
yeah, she's really special. And now we just moved to Orlando 2 weeks ago. She's like our neighbor now. She lives like 10 minutes from
Oh
us, which
my
is so great.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. How amazing. See,
Yeah,
everything fell into place. I think that's a
it's
really good
true.
lesson for people listening is that it's not if you're going to have ups and downs in surrogacy, it's when. You are absolutely
Mhm.
going to have ups and downs. It's just the nature of this process. And I think it's
Hmm.
encouraging for people to hear that even though you might come up against something that feels like total devastation, the end of the road, all the dreams are crushed, literally the next thing that happens could be the one perfect thing that you were waiting for. And you just have to stay the course. And I think that's so cool that you guys had that happen and it was someone that you knew and your neighbors now. How crazy is that?
It's awesome. Yeah, it is really
That's
cool.
really cool. So,
That was in 2019, right? And
yeah.
then the pandemic happened, and then that kind of pushed things. Because I think the first time she was supposed to go up to Connecticut
For transfer, right?
for, no, I think to get
Test.
tested in real life. Is that a thing? Or I don't
Yes.
know. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think she
like
would have had to get
No,
tested in,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, in real
same
life.
thing.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
in person.
You do it to
Like
like
in
Yeah,
person.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So she was scheduled to go like March 20th or something like that of 2020, somewhere at the end of March. And so of course it got canceled, and then she went up in July. She went up in July and got all of her testing done. And then our first transfer, for whatever reason, wasn't until February of 21.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure it was February of 21 because
Mm-hmm.
it was February 15th. For some reason, I remember, I don't know
I
why I
think
remember
because of
that.
the pandemic,
Yeah,
the
everything
clinics
was
were not.
just
Or maybe insurance. That's a common thing. Insurance, sometimes you have to wait till the first of the year. But yeah, it's very
maybe,
common. You have to wait
yes.
until the insurance kicks in on January 1st before you can start
Right.
medications. Yeah, that happens a
Yeah,
lot.
I think you might be right.
But there were so many elements that could have affected that
Yes.
too. Just
Yeah,
between her, she didn't feel safe. Her daughter has an autoimmune
yeah.
disorder, so she didn't want to deal with the COVID
COVID and
stuff, traveling and
traveling.
flying and stuff.
Of
So it was a
course.
lot of like negotiating those things that,
Mhm.
well, luckily, so many of us, if it was a pandemic specific stuff, a lot of it, but I
Yeah.
think it still goes to show like there's a reason it takes as long as it does.
Absolutely.
I want to say it was like February 8th. Not important, the date,
Anyway,
but I think it was February 8th. And then we did have a heartbeat, but it was always a little slow. So we ended up having a miscarriage,
Oh,
which was again like
same.
horrible. It was horrible. And just talk about, being so things out of your control. And not only that, it's like we were in all these different places. Like at the time we were living in Texas, Crystal's in Florida, our doctors are in Connecticut. So everything was, a delay in communication because of everyone's in different places. It was,
Also, just it was stressful. It was a stressful time.
yeah,
I think people forget too when a miscarriage doesn't just affect just the carrier, right? It affects everyone
everybody.
involved. Everyone involved, and I think people underestimate how what it does to you emotionally and
yeah.
spiritually. So that was a hard thing to move through, and she
Mhm.
ended up having to have a D&C, which I don't even know in Florida if she could have even done today,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
at the time, because
Because it was well past 6 weeks. I
her body
mean,
wouldn't let
yeah.
let the pregnancy go. So
Right.
that was hard,
Yeah.
and we had to pay for that and watch her
Hmm.
go through that, and so it's not just like, yay, you're pregnant, have a baby. Like there's ups and downs.
Yeah.
A lot of ups.
Yeah. And ultimately, she recovered amazingly, and it all after that happened really quick. It's really funny. I remember when it happened, and we were waiting for the DNC, and then obviously waiting for her to recover and waiting for a doctor to clear her, and also not really sure if she'd actually want to continue. Like that was definitely something that was going on in my mind. Like I remember having a conversation with myself, just telling myself like whatever is meant to be is meant to be, and maybe I'm not meant to have a child, or like in this way. Like I can remember saying, I was like, this is not
We
me
always told
controlling.
ourselves like if it doesn't go through surrogacy, we'll talk.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, but she, went to the doctor again for her checkup, and things moved very quickly after that. And we did our next transfer on July 15th. And
Steven remembers dates like
because I remember, well, because I
Me
wrote it
too.
down. I was very good at the beginning of writing everything down. I'm not
Uh,
anymore. I feel like I'm like, flying by the seat of my pants all the time. But it
yeah.
was July 15th. So that was a pretty quick turnaround ish. And yeah, and it was a go from there. And it was a very different doctor's appointment of when they heard the heart, when we heard the heartbeat. It was like boom, 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 boom. It was,
Yeah.
yeah, this is, yeah, yes, yes. And yeah.
That's amazing. And I'm so glad you're willing to talk about that experience of the miscarriage because it's so much more common in surrogacy than people realize. There's so many surrogates and intended parents that experience early miscarriage or even, not so early miscarriage after the first or even second transfer. It happened to me as well. And so I get that it's something that affects everyone so equally and people don't talk about it enough, but it's really super common. And I think we need to talk about it more and just understand that it's a very real possibility in any pregnancy, and that includes surrogacy. I think people think, oh, we're lining up all of these perfect parameters. Like this is the most, qualified candidate to be a surrogate and an excellent egg donor. And we've got a fertility clinic doing all the science. Like we have like the best chances ever. But nature is nature.
Hmm.
That's not something you can control. So I'm really grateful that you guys are willing to talk about that and be open about it because people need to understand it's a very real possibility, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the road.
right.
Right.
Yeah. So let's fast forward now. So you have a pregnancy, you have obviously a birth. Just give me a couple minutes. Tell me about the day of the birth. How did that all go down with you guys being in one state and her being in the other? And was it a surprise? Did you get in early? Walk me through that experience.
Yeah, well, Crystal called us, I guess about 2 weeks before his due date and was like, I just lost my mucus plug. And of course I had to Google it, like, what's a mucus plug?
You're like, what the heck is
And
that?
yeah, and she was like, I think we were like, oh, okay, well, how are you feeling? She's like, I just think you should get here, like, as soon as you can. So we were like, okay, so we booked our flight earlier than we thought. The lovely things that they were friends, so she was like, just stay with us. So we stayed with her and her kids and her husband in their guest room. And about, I don't know, we got there on like a Monday or something. It was like
It
beginning of
was
the
a
week.
Monday. Yeah, it was a
And
Monday.
Friday, I think she had a doctor's visit
It
with
was
her
like, yeah,
OB.
Wednesday or Thursday, I
Oh,
think.
Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
So yeah.
Wednesday we go with her to see her OB, and he was like checking everything. He's like, "So guys, do you want to have a baby this weekend or what?" And we were like, "Sure." So he's like, "I think
And
we're
it
gonna
was it was a week.
induce."
Yeah, it was a week early. He was due the week after, but this was
But
like a week and a half. She was
she's
ready.
tiny,
Yeah.
and he was like kicking all of her organs. He's big, and I think the doctor was like, "I think we should get him out of you before he tears you apart."
Yeah.
So like, let's
Right.
do that.
Right.
So he was like, we'll induce on Friday night. So we all went and checked into the hospital together, her husband and us. And, I was nervous. I had everything printed out that the lawyers gave us. And so I could just hand it to the head nurse, be like, we're supposed to be here. And I was
We
like,
are
I'm
supposed to be
sure.
here. And then also really quickly, like it was still like because it was March of 22, it was
Omicron.
still like sort of pandemic-y, even though we were in Florida and Florida was pretty lax. They were still, I think when we first got there, or even when we did like the what is it called? Like the plan, the birthing plan, like with the head of the hospital on the phone. They basically said definitely one of you can be in the room, but probably not both of you. So when we went in at this moment, we thought only one of us could be in the room. And when we got there, I remember you were like, you can do it. And I was like, what? I'm going to go in there by myself. And then we ended up, they were like, it's fine. You both can come in. And
Yeah.
so we were able to all be in the room. Yeah.
It was a
Good.
very bonding moment for us with Crystal and her husband Jacob because the four of us basically spent the night in the delivery room together, waiting for her to dilate more, which wasn't happening. So overnight, we took turns like napping.
And she told us it would happen like this because, obviously she had two kids and She was like, the Pitocin, her water had to be broken on both of her other births. The Pitocin never worked. And like, so, when they first came in and they were like, we're going to give you whatever amount of Pitocin, she was like, that's
Just wait.
it. So it's like,
nothing's gonna happen.
she's like, you guys, this is going to take forever.
Gosh, well, she knew what she was doing.
She's awesome. And so we bonded. Then I remember when
They broke her water around like 7 a.m.
so we got there 10:30 Friday night. They broke her water at 7 a.m. And then she's starting to feel like her contractions increasing. And so then they ended up giving her her epidural. And I just remember she was feeling so good. And we were silly and we were making jokes. And the doctor comes in and we're just laughing. Oh, you're ready. Let's go. And all the lights came on. The nurses came.
Oh my God.
Showtime. It was like, yeah.
Wow.
And we were like, oh my gosh, okay, like this is happening. And it was,
wow.
And we tell Maverick all the time, like about the day we met him. And we say we were hanging out with Crystal and Jacob, and then all of a sudden you just popped out. And he always makes this story about how, when you met me, I just popped out. And it's kind of what happened. Like his face just came popping out, and we were like, and we were crying, and it was just really beautiful. And she was so amazing. Like I just remember seeing Crystal's face when we looking at us while we held him, and it was just really special.
And she actually, there's funny, we have some photos. The nurses were amazing in the room. They took a million photos. And also Crystal, there are photos that we have that you can tell that it's from her point of view, like after he was born.
She was taking
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I love birth stories. They almost make me cry every time. It's so neat. So now you have a beautiful, you said 3-year-old, right? And you are embarking on journey number 2. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So that's exciting. So you're just getting started. You're ready for, I know you said your little one just started like a preschool situation. So you're finally ready to start thinking about sleepless nights again with a newborn?
Well, honestly, it kind of goes down to like, well, first off, Steven's like, I want another kid. And I'm like, I'm on the fence about this because the 3 years that we've gone through were a lot. But I do love the idea of Matt having a sibling, and we do have 2 embryos frozen. I'm willing to like see what happens with those embryos, because otherwise, what are we gonna do? Just throw away or donate them?
Right.
Let's see what it's kind of like last time. Let's see where the journey takes us.
Yeah.
I would love to have that for Maverick. So we'll see. I'm not thinking about sleepless nights. I'm just really thinking about Maverick, and I would love for him to have a sibling.
Well, to be clear, Maverick was such a good sleeper that I mean, although I'm not saying that we weren't up all the time, but we were very fortunate. He started sleeping through the night at like almost 4 months.
That's awesome.
So it is awesome. But that being said, it is also still exhausting. Yeah, we're super excited. Also, like talking about the journey, and doing it all again. It's very unknown and it is exciting. We're just gonna keep going until we see what happens.
Well, I'm excited for you, and I know that you know this already, but what's meant to be will be. And it's just really amazing that you were able to go through this experience and have your little guy. And I hope you have another little guy or gal for that sibling. And so the last question I have for you is if you could give advice. So if you could give advice to intended parents who are looking to start this journey, what would you say to them? And then if you could give advice to women who are looking to become a surrogate, what would you say to them?
For an intended parent, I think I would say just put your patient's hat on. Know that it's not going to be a perfect journey. It's like parenting is not a perfect, you can't be a perfect parent. It's not going to be a perfect journey, but the right kid is waiting for you.
Yes.
And my advice is always, if you want to have a child, you want to be an intended parent, take action right now, right? Don't say, oh, this isn't the right time. Or, I mean, even if it's not, right? Just take action today, whether it's finding a fertility clinic or finding a doctor. Just take that first step because it doesn't happen quickly, right? And I've told couples this before. I'm like, if it's even a thought in your head, do something about it today because it's not going to happen overnight.
Absolutely.
And then for carriers, I would say for anyone who's interested in being a carrier, if you're ever like, I really would love to just help someone do that or go on that journey, just find out if you're even a fit. Like
Yeah.
just start with because just because you go to an agency and you fill out a questionnaire, it doesn't mean you have to get pregnant and carry someone's child,
Right.
but you might just get more information. And the beauty of that is that in the end, you're helping someone create a lasting legacy for themselves that perhaps can't do that on their own. And you get to say that you're a part of that. You get to be bonded to that person. And I mean, I just don't think there's I think about, oh God, I'm going to get it. I just think about Crystal, and I said this to her at the hospital. I was like, this is the most loving thing anyone has ever done for me. I can't think of any person in my life that has made me feel this much love. And it's because she helped make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So beautiful. Well,
I'm not
yeah.
gonna like add to that because I agree. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the perfect note to end on. And I'm just so grateful that you were willing to share your story. And I'm so excited to watch your story online and see how this next adventure goes for you. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you for the work you do.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So that brings us to the end of this episode of the Normalized Surrogacy podcast. Again, I'm your host, Carey Flamer-Powell. I want to again thank my very special guests, Bret and Stephen, for joining me today. You can learn all about the Broadway husbands via the links in this podcast episode. Check us out at surrogacymentor.com if you are interested in knowing whether surrogacy is right for you. Thanks, and see you next time.